Causes of female criminality. Why do women commit crime? The women who most often become involved in crime and end up in the criminal justice system tend to be poor and economically marginalized and lack educational and/or vocational opportunities. In his strain theory, Merton stated that women are prone to commit crime when they fail to attain culturally defined goals through institutional means. Women's economic status, coupled with their more extensive histories of abuse, makes it understandable that the crimes they tend to commit more often, or in which they are otherwise overrepresented, are ones that could be considered survival crimes. For example, property crimes such as larceny or theft, fraud, forgery, and sex crimes such as prostitution are viable methods of survival for women on the economic margins. These factors shape the nature and extent of crime for women compared with men. Poverty is one of the main causes of all crimes, which has become a social evil for the whole world, especially for underdeveloped countries. In Pakistani society, poverty pushes individuals to adopt means that are not only detrimental to their lives, but also to the whole community. Influences related to female delinquency include a poor economic background, lack of education or training, and an inferior mentality. Sometimes the environment shapes their attitude as rebellion. Poverty influences the vulnerable fraction of society to commit crime for unfulfilled basic needs, hopelessness, low living standards, and inequality of resources. In Pakistan, the female literacy ratio is very low compared to males. Since illiteracy has roots in poverty, most of the women in prison are either illiterate or belong to poor families. Patriarchal power relations shape gender differences in crime, pushing women into crime through victimization, role entrapment, economic marginality, and survival needs. Due to the patriarchal structure, Pakistani women are less empowered in terms of mobility and are highly dependent on males. The lower class women don't have access to conventional means to achieve their goals. Therefore, women commit crime for the betterment of their lives and their families, but imprisonment later puts harsh and detrimental effects on prisoners and their families. There have been extensive investigations by sociologists, criminologists, and psychologists of the differences in criminal behavior between men and women. The early literature on this subject, starting with Lombroso and Sigmund Freud, claimed that female criminals were anomalies and that they showed biological and psychological traits very similar to those of male criminals. Later, they stressed the importance of sociocultural factors and emphasized that the role of gender in the crime market mirrors the role of gender in wider society. They argued that if the gender gap in crime was the result of biological differences between men and women, it would not change over time or space, which it clearly does. Lack of scholarship on female crimes and criminality. Criminology has historically been a field dominated by male scholars seeking to explain the criminality of other men. The subject of gender and crime is complex, multifaceted, and certainly worthy of serious scholarly attention. The study of the nature and extent of crime has largely been the study of the nature and extent of male crime. The results of largely male-based studies have been used to craft programs, interventions, and punishments that are applied to all offenders. These male-based interventions have historically been merely used to respond to girls' and women's crime on the basis of the assumption that a one-size-fits-all model of crime, punishment, theory, and intervention works for both genders. Researchers in the 20th and 21st centuries, though, have challenged the notion that female offenders are the same as male offenders, that the two commit crimes for the same reasons, and that they should be treated in the same manner by the criminal justice system. Girls and women who committed crimes were for too long the forgotten offenders. Indeed, the term the invisible offender is often used by feminist scholars to describe the lack of scholarship on and knowledge of female offenders. Women were either eliminated from samples or data on them were excluded from analyses seeking to explain crime or understand the effectiveness of the criminal justice system. The result of this androcentric focus is that theories of crime and justice were really theories of male crime and justice. The specific focus on female offenders began in the 1970s, largely because of the work of feminist scholars. Indeed, the number of scholars labeled feminist criminologists has continuously increased during this time span and has resulted in a widening of the research agenda for scholars exploring the topic of gender and crime. Prior to this era, research on girls or women and crime tended to be haunted by stereotypes about evil and bad women, and the work focused almost exclusively on prostitution. Feminist scholars, by contrast, began to explore whether girls and women committed crime for different reasons than boys and men. They also focused on a wider range of offenses,